today?
Chairman, we're ready to start.
All
It
right.
is 1:10 and we are back, and at this point, we are going to review the legal report. I will let Laura take over. Usually, given that the complaint committee has already met and discussed all the cases, we do very similar to what reciprocity does, which is I will present it to the chair of the committee to go over any complaints, questions, given that we had cases that are a little bit different than the usual. Laura will be happy to explain those, and Mr. Chair, I'll turn it over to you.
This morning, when we met with the complaint committee, we did review the items that were presented. There were a number that we discussed, the first 8 or so that we discussed quite a bit. And as we went through the reports, the report was accepted as amended. There were only a couple of changes in that, and they were very minor. So we would, it was,
There was an amendment on case 12,
I believe that's
or
correct.
case 11, I apologize.
11 is what it was.
The board amended the recommendation to include a $250 civil penalty. And I believe that was the only amendment.
Page was that on?
That was on page.
Right, I believe that was just for the civil penalty. We would need a motion from one of the members to accept this report.
Make a motion to accept the report.
Do we have a second?
Before we make, before you vote on that motion, I don't know if you would like to, or if you'd like me to fill in the board a little bit about the first 8 cases. I think
That would be fine, as we had reviewed them this morning, so if you wanted to give them more information, I think they've read them.
the first 8 cases on the legal report pertain to allegations that came forward about some individuals, some of whom previously worked for the department, that were involved in issuing licenses fraudulently to members who are, to people in Tennessee who would otherwise not be qualified to get a license. The respondent in case 8 has given a statement, and based on the allegations that respondent made, this department has now opened the cases against the individuals in the shops that were named. I'm recommending revocation for all of them and a civil penalty for the respondent in case 8. Questions, then proceed with your vote on the motion.
Second.
Second.
We had a second from Mr. Finger to accept the report. Is there any other discussion from the members? All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. Motion carries.
We are back then on our main report and looking at our consent orders. I will give you a page number here in just a minute. And before the board for approval, on page number 173, the board has taken in for the months of August and September a total of $68,025 in consent orders and agreed orders. We need a motion and a second to accept these consent orders as presented on your iPads.
Motion to accept the consent orders.
A second.
We have a motion, and it's seconded by Mr. Gambuzzo to accept the consent orders. Is there any other discussion on this? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Motion carries.
Next, for our agreed citations, we have a total of $11,700 paid during the month of August. We need a a motion for that as well.
Make a motion to accept.
Second.
We have a motion, seconded by Mr. Finger, to accept the report on the agreed citations. Thank you. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries.
As far as cases with letters of warning, we have 7 cases listed, and those will be presented, the letters of warning and closing the case. We need a motion for that as well.
Make a motion to accept the letters of warning.
Second.
We have a motion, seconded by Ms. Barger, to accept the letters of warning. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries.
For new business, I had previously emailed the board the 2016 meeting dates so that everyone could have an opportunity to look at your personal calendars. These dates all fall in line with the 2015 dates that we've approved. We always hold our meetings the first Monday of the month. We have a total of 9 board meetings throughout the year. The months that we do not meet are still going to be considered January, July, and September. The only months that we've changed the date on is the month of February, and that is to not have to drive the day after Super Bowl. And so we're doing that again, if the board agrees. And then the month of December, we moved it to the second Monday to give ourselves a span from the holiday weekend and get more licensees that need their applications reviewed, because there's that skip in January. And so if the board is okay with these dates, we will reserve this room through 2016 and also address the parking almost a year in advance in hopes that that helps a little bit, and I would need a motion to approve these dates.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve. It's been properly seconded. If no one has a conflict with this, those in favor say aye. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. One
I'm
moment.
currently in a situation where 3 of those dates, February, May, and August, are currently committed, but I have email requests out to all 3 to see if I can possibly get those dates moved. I think 1 shouldn't be a problem at all, which kind of keeps me in the scope of good behavior, I think. But I very rarely have said that in my life. But I'll keep you guys posted as I do, and just as soon as I know, I'll let you know.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kumbus. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries.
Next on your iPads are the proposed rules. These are the rules that last month we handed out in paper, and we've been discussing and going back and forth. Laura presented these. We've asked that if you have any other items that you'd like to review and add to these, or caught anything that needed to be done differently, to make sure that we can discuss them. So I want to open the floor for any of those conversations. I know earlier today we also talked about adding the language regarding the 750 hours, the crossover between the barbering to cosmetology. So this is gives us a chance to do so and ask any questions, debate, and then the thought, of course, is to have a better version of this at the November meeting and continue forward with these.
Items in red are the proposed changes as they are
That is
currently.
correct. Yes, that is correct. And Laura did, I think I said that last month, she did an outstanding job putting this together. Many of these changes have to do with the 2015 legislative laws that changed, so they kind of forced us to look at it all. Others are things that we'd been trying to fix, but the last round of rules focused so much on the apprenticeship and the specialty schools, we might have missed something. So it's just something in work, and the rulemaking committee has done a great job also meeting in the before our full meeting and reviewing these. So I think whatever else needs to be handed to them possibly to look at, that's also an option before November.
Page 2, item number 7 in red, that the school shall have a backup method for logging hours that have been earned by the students. We're not going to specify what that method is. It could be paper, or it could be any other.
Roxana, this is not where we're addressing the new fees. Are we going to do that at a later time?
I think next on the iPad, I've discussed it, we're gonna need to add the new fees. So yes, I definitely, to this, right. We haven't already opened it, although the fees are, I believe, 400, is it 10? 15? But we will, this is where we would incorporate any new changes, so we'll have to open that section of the rules as well, to both Barber and Cosmo. Page 195 has the fees, but again, it's not scratched off with our changes, so we're going to discuss what we're proposing, those changes, and that's for the Barber side. And I'll find the Cosmo here in a minute. $185 has the fees for the cosmetology.
Page 185, which is 5 in the handout, it's showing cosmetologist, the original license was 50 pretty much across the board, except for instructor at 70. And then when you come down below for renewal, they're all 50 across the board again, except 60 for instructor. And I was just wondering if there's any reason for that inconsistency or shift.
Is the instructor fee, yes.
Right, but,
They've got that extra $10.
yeah, but up above, it's $20 extra for the original license.
That's correct. That's how it was written. I'm with you.
Okay.
Barber, if you look at their fees are like that. It's the first license is one amount, the renewal is completely different. That's why I think as we look at these fees and look at a consistency and something that makes sense.
Yeah, because, I mean, I can't imagine, unless there was some kind of administrative purpose, but then again, it would correlate to the renewal on the others, and it doesn't, so that's kind of what threw me off. I don't know if it's going to break the budget, but I was just looking at consistency.
I agree with you. No, I think we're going to look at these fees and do something that makes sense.
On the apprenticeship, okay, let me get this clear. They can get 50/50, but they have to start with 0 hours, right? When this comes into effect, or is it for students that are already in the school? Will they be able to participate in that?
The way we wrote the rules that are with the Secretary of State now, we said that a student coming in would have to sign a contract from the beginning stating that they are going to be doing the apprenticeship.
What if they come from another school as a
The
new
way
student?
we worded it is that they had to start in that school as an apprentice. Now, what we didn't say is if they were an apprentice in another school, that they couldn't transfer into a different school and continue the apprenticeship. So that's possibly going to be presented to the board if a student says, I'm leaving school A and going to B, but I want to remain as an apprentice. That is very possible to be able to be carried out. I think the board's concern, or at least how I remember our meeting January, was to make sure that the apprentice student interested in this finished 750, finished the half, tested and did the theory, and then went on to the supervision. So it may have to depend on where in their apprenticeship process they are. If there's already in the side of working under the supervision of an experienced individual, that may very well be able to be feasible if the second school takes on that responsibility with the same person. If they're still doing their theory, that may be a little bit trickier, because the goal is for them to be able to test successfully in the theory and get them to finish that piece. So we may have to look at that as it happens.
A little tricky, and like some of the students are like, we're already in here, can we not do it? And I'm like, I don't.
No,
Is
now,
that how it's
it was
written?
clearly written to not.
Not.
If a student's already started school,
They cannot.
I think the way the board stated it was you need to start from nothing, sign the contract to be an apprentice student and start at 0.
Page 192. This is in, it says the school shall maintain documents that the refunds owed to the students are received in a timely manner. Received by the student may be a little more tricky than it sounds. Most schools will process their refunds. They'll either deliver them face-to-face or they'll send them out in some form that's traceable. But for that,
Like to amend that. So that's H1 on page 12 of the handout, 192. Like to just not have that in there at all, or do you want to change the wording?
I think
Received.
Yeah,
are
that's what it
issued
sounds like.
in a timely manner, yes.
That way you did your part.
And if the question were asked, I would say that a timely manner would be somewhere between 30 and 45 days.
So do you want it to say issued between 30 and 45 days?
I think we could just say timely manner. Most schools will take care of that pretty.
Policy, I think. Case we had this morning where the lady thought didn't mean to retire her license, she just mean to do, what did she think she did?
Or instructor license into an active, but not retire the rest of it. And of course, what that means is you continue renewing every 2 years your basic license.
I think a lot of people maybe were confused, maybe that we could make a note in there somewhere for people to read on the laws, that the difference between them or something, inactive and retirement.
Actually, on the rules it talks about retired, it doesn't address instructors at all because its purpose is to really retire your full license. Under the instructor section, it says separately, you may go inactive if you are current with your continuing education and timely asking to go inactive. So it sort of is in two different places. It's just, you know, if we
Better to
wanted
have
to look at something, what we talked briefly about was, right now, if you retire your license at, let's say, 59, and you don't come back to active, you don't need it, you turn 70, and then decide, I really want to practice again, you could come right back in. You just contact the board, send a letter, pay your fee, and get your license back. But if you retire at 35 to stay home and raise kids, and then realize at 45, okay, I've got to go back to the workforce, that individual has to retest. They're coming back before the age of 65.
Are your licenses to avoid paying your renewal fee?
Pretty much. It's yeah. So you don't lose the education, obviously, but you do then have to retest depending on the age. So in the office, we just, as practice, I know since I've been there, I know Betty can vouch, we always say, are you sure? Because if you're under the age of 65 to come back in, you're going to have to retest. So I know we do that cautionary, but you know, by the time they remember or need it, many times it's, I'm now desperate to work and I'd really rather not test. And it's a hard situation.
Like if a mother stayed home to raise her kids, and when they get like 15, she wants to go back to work, and she'd retired them, she's got to retest. But if she's 65, she don't have to.
Longer.
Should have them kids at old age, maybe.
Take a look at page 188, please. Rule change regarding managers. Managers entitled to 2 30-minute periods in which they can be away from the premises. Wondering what sort of unforeseen consequences we may be. Do an inspection, of course. Is there going to keep a log with this, or?
This rule wasn't written specifically to address supervision of apprentices, but to address managers and shops. And
Right.
right now, a lot of times what we have is inspectors going to shops, and then the manager shows up right before the inspector leaves saying, I went to lunch. It does seem like plausible that when you're at work, you need to take a break, either because you just need a break or you need to pick up someone from school or whatever. Kind of researching laws, I found that Ohio law kind of sort of puts in there that they're allowed to take certain number of breaks. The idea is most inspections take longer than 30 minutes, frankly. So if an inspector shows up and they're there for 30 minutes and the manager doesn't come back, then it's not a 30-minute lunch break. It's that they're just not there and someone called them and then they're showing up. The idea was to give a little bit more flexibility both to managers and then also to shop owners who have a hard time getting people to be managers, because they incur a lot of liability when they become the manager, and they can't leave the shop at all while it's open. So
Are there
that's
cases?
what this was.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Are there instances where more than one person is listed as manager during a particular
So when we get an application for a shop, and a manager that is a licensee is required. And more often than not, that's the only time we hear about the manager's name. The only time, for the most part, we are told, oh, I've changed managers, is if there's been a falling out between the shop and the manager and they no longer want to be listed. So this actually is going to help us. We want to know and have a way to know who the manager should be when we walk in. And by we, I mean the field inspectors. When they walk in, if the manager's license can be displayed, and whether it's, you know, I'll use Walmart for example, a picture on the wall or the name of the manager on duty today, something to tell the field people this is who should be on duty. I think that that's a well looked at point. But also on the renewal process, we're going to ask them to reiterate who is your manager, because we know that they change. But the law right now does give us the ability to have a substitute manager, if you will. And
Yeah, you'd have, I mean.
you
'cause
have to,
if
right.
you're-
And for the most part, they don't report that person to us. And to be honest with you, with our volume of shops, it'd almost be impossible for us to track the constant movement of managers. So I believe that, and in a minute, we're going to talk about our new system with CORE, with the new computer system and changes to the renewal forms. What we'd like to see is that the renewal form for the shop ask for that name and that information. So we have something every 2 years that lets you update us and let us know who that individual is. Unfortunately, many of our shops just struggle giving us that information, you know, even with the application. So we've got to do it and ask for it. We'll just have to see how is it that we can enforce it if they don't turn it in. You know, we still need to renew them. So it's one of those tricky pieces. But yes, they tell us just one manager, generally speaking, and that's it. Yeah.
Hasn't been a place to update that information.
Correct, yeah.
And I can speak personally, mine is outdated.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. No, and it would surprise us if we contacted the shops and they were current because of that. So the new system has the capability to ask you questions when you renew, and we'll talk more in a minute, but I'm gonna have that with shops to where if you're paying online, you have to answer who this manager is. And if you don't know their license number, just like right now, you connect through tn.verify and you pull the license number and you've got it all. And that data then will feed directly to us. That does mean encouraging our shops to renew more online than in paper, but that would be phenomenal.
Don't really have anything that says you can't have more than one manager. I
Not
mean,
at
you,
all. Right.
when
You
I'm
could.
looking at it from my studio salons, you know, everybody who's working has to be the manager because they're the only one there. Yes. Okay.
Just the one manager is going to be able to sign for everything. So if you've got somebody who is a cosmetology licensee, they can sign off on the inspection on them.
Barbers.
Shop manager must be licensed by this board for at least one discipline that the shop is licensed to offer.
Yes, sir, but right now, I don't think that we can allow it to cross the two programs.
So they'd still have to
I
have a
hope
barber
it's just-
manager there
Yeah.
as well. Okay.
There's always efforts in the legislature to standardize and make things easier for business owners, but right now, this is what we can do in the rules.
It's a fantastic thing, because then within the cosmetology side, at least, that has more diversity or different license types, you could have a natural hairstylist that is a fantastic manager, and she doesn't have to oversee the manicuring and the haircut. I mean, she's just going to be used as a great manager that knows how to run the shop, if you will. And across the board, it's the same way in every direction within Cosmo, and then hopefully in the near future, we'll see that crossover.
Add to the current, but I do want to revisit the fact that we brought up this morning that we wanted to address the dual license rules.
That code won't be in this handout since I hadn't previously thought to amend it. 02001-113. That's that specific rule in the barber rules.
We are open to language that kind of addresses,
So we're
Over.
clearly taking I think everyone's kind of in agreement that the 750 to be dual licensed in either direction is way too much. We agree. So, but we can't, from what
We agree with work history.
we agree with
right?
work history, but we
Right.
can't,
No, I'm just saying, it's not a blanket statement that we agree across the board, no matter who the applicant or request would be coming from.
well, like right now, our rules say that to be dual licensed, you have to get 750 more hours, and we agree that's crazy.
In all cases?
Well, I mean, if they have a cosmetology license and they want to be licensed as a barber as well, do they need 750 more hours of school?
I don't know enough of what's duped in there for somebody who's out of school 4 months and now wants to shave. Like, I'm totally on board with today's situation. My concern would be, and I think it was yours too this morning, is what happens to, a young hipster that says, hey, man, I want to do shaves too, and yet they can't even, like, cut their way out of a paper bag yet. Maybe that person, because they don't have the work history. To me, the work history piece is the crux to making that be looked at differently. I think we got to be cautious we don't open up a can of worms here that lets a newbie jump on board because we now don't think 750 is necessary. That's my only reservation to that. And again, because I don't know how much of that is duplicated, because it almost boiled down to, if we just extracted the two pieces that weren't, was pedicure and shave.
That's it.
But is everything else consistent in there? So where'd the formula come from? Just like cut it in half? It was a simple plug-in?
No, I don't. I mean,
not
I'm
quite
sorry.
so simple. Go ahead.
Oh, I apologize.
Please.
I was just going to give you all the timeline history on this rule. I think it's beyond our institutional knowledge of us sitting here at the table, because this rule was first introduced, I can see, was created in 1984, and then it was changed in 1990, and the last change I can see on it was 1997. So that's, we're on almost 20 years ago. I don't know the discussions of that rule and all of that. I don't know if we keep any of that historical documentation, or I don't know what you have back there, Roxana, so far as minutes or tapes or whatever, but we cannot give you any insight as to why or how that 750, which was your question, came to be.
Well, that 750 is 20 years old?
Yes,
Really?
I don't, specifically, that rule was last amended in 1997 is what it's showing, so.
Or a dual license?
Or if you have your barber license and you want to go
So that's
be a
always been then, huh?
cosmetology, then 750 of your barber hours will transfer over, and vice versa.
I never even knew that was a rule all along, I guess. That's good to know then, thanks.
It was,
Yeah.
yes, 1997.
I think I understand, from context, right, the history of perhaps a time when the disciplines did not overlap as much as they do now. But the fact that the only thing the barbers are not learning in school is pedicuring. They learn manicuring, but not pedicuring, and manicuring is on their practical exam. It is not on the cosmetologist practical exam. And cosmetologists are not learning shaving. Other than that, from what I can tell, the curriculums are more or less the same. And they're both 1,500 hours. And really, the only difference in why I say this is everyone that works for me, when I ask them why did they choose the school that they chose, why did you choose to go to this barber school, why did you choose to go to this cosmetology school, the answer is friends who went there. It was around the corner. I could get financial aid. We're not choosing between colleges across the country or graduate programs. These are pretty clear-cut decisions. I would tell you that very few people go get the dual license because 750 hours is a lot of additional hours.
To learn the same thing, really.
Right.
Here's some of the differences, just so you guys have a little working knowledge of this. The history and fundamentals of barbering, that's kind of self-explanatory. Barber implements, which to the great extent are going to be the same implements that you find in cosmetology, with the exception all the different clippers and razors and honing and stropping and taking
But
care of
honing and
those
stropping, you
implements.
can't even do anymore, right? Because you have to use. You can? I thought you had to have a disposable razor.
You have to sanitize correctly. Yeah, so the implements are really relatively the same, with the exception being in those implements that are really the electric clippers and those kind of items. Time spent in the use and practice of those electric clippers and tools is probably greatly different. Because, again, when the people that come to our school ask about that, they will tell me conversely that I want to come to a barber school. I don't want to do hair colors and those kind of things. And we have a lengthy conversation with them about you're required to do all of these things if you're going to be a master barber. You're going to be tested on it. So there is that element. With shaving, of course, is absolutely the portion we're talking about. Hair cutting, hairstyling, and hair setting, those things are really kind of common, with the exception of how you do some of that clipper work. A lot of people from the cosmetology side tells me they were never trained in any fashion on how to use clippers in their school. And move on. The chemicals are on both sides, manicures and nail care both sides. There's only one statement in the book that I've been able to find that says all barbers are required to sanitize correctly their pedicure bowls. So it's actually still in the book there, but we don't do that anymore. Anatomy and physiology is still the same. Makeup and skincare. Theories of massage and facial treatment. That speaks a little bit to the aesthetic side. Disorders of the skin, scalp, and hair. Barber rules and laws and regulations. Okay. Chemical hours, of course. Physical hours. Hairpiece is one thing that I didn't mention. Is hairpiece part of the cosmetology? Okay. So those are just a few of the things that are common and different in them. With the biggest portion of that agreeable would be the actual physical practice of using the razor. And I agree with your point this morning, Amy, very strongly that a lot of students are not trained in that with a real blade. However, I think I also know why they're not allowed to use the blade on the state board exams. While you're in a barber school, you're under the auspices of that master barber instructor, and he is overseeing you and training you. Once you've graduated from that school, prior to actually being licensed, you're in no man's land. You're not a student. You're not a barber. Therefore, nobody can actually really supervise you under that. I think that PSI probably doesn't want to take on the liability of perhaps somebody who's not yet licensed. A straight razor blade to somebody's face. That's just.
Barber exam is with an actual model as opposed to a mannequin, so I think the possibility of someone getting cut is probably the reason that it's not on the practical.
I hear what you're saying 100% because I employ both disciplines. And cosmetologists come to me from cosmetology school, and you're right, they do not have the clipper experience. And the barbers come to me from barber school, and they don't have the shear experience. So that sort of works for or against you, depending on what you. I'm not advocating that anyone right out of hair school or newly licensed should be able to sit for the barber college exam. What I'm asking is that all of these things, like many other things that both barbers and cosmetology students, cosmetologists and barbers are learning, is what they've been doing since then. And can we look at work history in the industry by that instead of 750 hours? I mean, Joanna's someone that I can tell you has done over 10,000 haircuts since 2012. It's a lot of men's haircuts. But if you're doing men's haircuts, you're probably doing a lot of them wherever you would go to work. I'm just asking for the opportunity for folks who have that work experience to be considered to test. And I would say that it's a minimum of 5 years. That's what the look back is if you're moving here from another state, so that keeps it consistent.
If I could, I don't know that it will help the board to come up with the statement. I can read what it is that Section 13 for the barber actually spells out. So that section says, any person holding a valid Tennessee cosmetology license will be given credit for 750 hours toward obtaining a Tennessee barber license. In order to be eligible for the above, the cosmetologist must be enrolled in a barber school. So that piece would need to be considered. Full-time, minimum of 6 hours, maximum of 8 hours per day. After the student has completed their first 750 hours in the barber school, the board will apply the second 750 hours for the purpose of graduating and being permitted to take the barber exam. So if we leave in there, for those that choose to go that route, that they would be enrolled in a barber school and continue, but add or somehow, in lieu of the hours, has a minimum of 500 hours, and then we fill in what does that mean with the experience of barbering and traditional, and it opens up the avenue of applicants that are probably coming from other states in many situations, or just follow that passion. But now that it's not allowed for them to shave, many moving forward may not have the shaving experience.
What's the reason why it's forced to full-time?
It says that, but I don't think that. I mean, most of the barber schools I've been into, the most recent one I inspected has 80 students enrolled, 15 barber chairs, and at any given time, I would tell you there are 5 to 10 students. There's no way that anybody there is going full-time. Full-time students, part-time I mean, it's amazing to me.
I think that's the piece that really prevents somebody from being able to go for that dual license piece. If they're currently working and having a family, you can't.
Even if they don't have the work experience.
Right. It just sort of, life is in the way to allow you to make that move.
Frank, I currently have a student in my school who is a New York licensee. She's had her own business for 25 years, and she is obtaining credential to transfer the hours to, in this exact scenario we're talking about here. She is a full-time student. That's the only way we would let her enroll. But it creates a hardship for her. She had to make arrangements at her work where she works as a cosmetologist. But she sees the value of the license. She wants to have that extra credential. So, I mean, currently I've got a student in exactly that position with 25 years of shop ownership.
Ron, can I, as a school owner, do you see that being important, of whether she was there full-time or part-time to?
The only thing that I would attach importance to on the full-time or part-time is when a student is really part-time, if they're not being consistent in their attendance, no matter what the program is, they'll take 2 steps forward and 1 step back if they miss several days. It's that consistency of being there on a regular basis. I think a part-time basis in that would be absolutely fine.
Could I say something? I think that in a case what we're dealing with, 325 hours is enough for the second license. The time on the work experience, 5 to 7 years, should be sufficient. Either or. At least, 5 to 7 years.
Where do you get the 325 from?
Half of 750.
Yeah.
At least we would cover the fact of being in a barber school, and there's probably a few things that they are going to be able to learn, even though she's shaved 30 years. And the first thing would be how to stand, to save yourself. That's just one of them. So there are some things that you can learn. It's not the same thing, but you need to be equipped. And that's where I'm making the argument. But in her case, I'm sure she does great work. But just to keep the other people off your back is saying that I want to do that too, and you let her do it, so I want in. But also going the route of not punishing her for 750 hours.
I mean, I don't disagree with you, but I'm all for opening the door, because I don't see the drawback of having more people licensed in more things, and they've all got to take the test.
Right.
So if they don't know their stuff, they're not going to pass the test.
Right.
But I don't know why. My question to the barbers is, why is everyone so afraid of having so many more licensed barbers?
Because I think it's great. I just don't see it that way. I just was basically going at the problem.
Well, I don't disagree with you. I mean, my frustration is, it seems like the barber schools are very protective of
right.
what they're doing.
Right.
And I get that. They should be. But if I thought that they were providing a top-tier education that was as competitive as what the cosmetology schools are offering, I wouldn't be having this argument.
Right.
But I would tell you that right now, where we sit in Tennessee, and the schools that I've been in, if someone came to me and said, should I go to cosmetology or barbering school, I would tell them to go to cosmetology school, with the exception of Mr. Ron's school, because I know what kind of school he runs. But from what I can tell, when I go into a barber school, or when I've met people who've gone to barber school, they spend 99% of their time on their phones.
So you're right.
And they're not learning anything.
Right.
And so for someone who is taking this business very seriously, who wants to make a living, a long-term living in this business, who understands the value of a $20,000 hair school program. I was shocked when I got in this business and realized that hair school was $20,000. That's a lot of money to sit there for 1,500 hours and learn nothing. Or, to your point, learn the test. And then they come out into the workforce, and I'll be honest with you, I can't hire them. I would love to hire more barbers. I can't hire barbers, because they come out of barber school learning what's on the test, with the exception maybe of Mr. Ron's school, and all they know how to do is use their clippers. And 99% of them have no idea how to shave, because they never learned that in school. And it's a sad state of affairs. But I would encourage that this will make the barber business even more robust, and will help the ranks of barbers, because right now it's kind of a sad state out there. It's sad to me when I'm on an inspection and my inspector tells me that he's been closing down barbershops all day because there are older barbers who want to retire, and they don't have any barbers to take over their shops, because they simply don't exist. And so instead of being able to sell their business or generation to the next generation, they're just closing the door.
Okay.
Stan, I see it every day. I'm in it.
So let's think about this. It sounds like, the problems that we're having are mainly technical problems as far as licensing is concerned, because even though you learn the skill, you don't perfect it until you're in your shop working. Truly. So we have pedicuring and we have shaving. That we need to find a way, and it's a license we're talking about, so we can't give it away. I mean, people have put hours and $20,000 and all kinds of stuff into it, so we can't just give it away. But I think we need to make an easy transition for either discipline that have learned mainly the same things, whatever they're learning to take their test to get their original license. We need to have an easy path for a barber to go in and take a 2-week-long course on pedicuring, or a cosmetologist to go in and take a 2-week-long course on shaving. And that's the difference.
And that's what we're talking about this morning. That would take a program addition through the legislature. Is that correct? What can we do?
Yeah, that's a complicated question, because I'm not sure what the Attorney General's office would say, because they're the ones who have the final say on your rules. Like in a proposed amendment here, if you make it a different hour amount or whatever you all say, they have to review it. And they haven't reviewed this rule since 1997 was the last time they may have. And oftentimes we've sent rules that just amend things like this to the Attorney General's office, and they'll look at it and they'll say, "Oh, they should have never approved that 20 years ago. I don't think it's constitutional now." And they may just say no. It happened to Laura last set of rules. There was a thing about a fee that came up as non-constitutional or whatever. So, and I say that because I'm not really sure what their reaction will be, because this is all kind of new, a new thing that we've implemented of the merging of the boards over the years. This rule has been on the books, and it evidently, I guess, really hasn't been a problem in the past. And I'm wondering, when the Attorney General's office reads the statute, it says, to be a cosmetologist, you have to have 1,500 hours X, Y, and Z. To be a barber, you have to have this many hours X, Y, and Z. And they may just look at it and say, that's it. We'll change it at the legislature. You don't have any flexibility to create a rule. They may say that. What we have is a rule that has previously been approved where it appears that the Attorney General's office previously allowed there to be some kind of compromise on hours down to 750. What you're suggesting is, well, what if we just take that a little bit? I'm sorry. Here's what I hear. What I hear you saying is,
Yes.
instead of saying 750 hours, can we make a rule that says if somebody wanted to be who's a cosmetologist who wanted to receive a master barber's license, that they would take a however many hour course specifically on shaving or whatnot and show us proof of very easily switch with one to the other. I'm not sure what they would say. I mean,
Well,
I don't know.
unfortunately-
Right, to say, and then they could go test.
Oh, excuse me,
No
I'm
one is
sorry,
saying
yes,
that-
yeah, I didn't
Everyone is
mean
saying
to-
that
Go
taking the
yes.
state
Yes, I didn't-
exams is part of this.
Unfortunately, the only
the
reason we
test.
have this problem now is because there was a piece of legislation kind of put in that's because cosmetologists weren't really prohibited from shaving before. There was the law passed that said they can shave with a safety razor. Am I correct?
When was that passed?
July.
July 1st
So
of 2015.
that's why we have this issue. Before, you didn't have barbers begging to do pedicures. That was not a problem. You had cosmetologists who had used to been doing this. Now there's a law where there wasn't before that said you can't.
And to sort of add to that, they really couldn't shave before. There was just nothing that said in writing, you can't shave. But the word shave wasn't used in anything that described cosmetologists. So what happened is, as we were thoroughly doing our jobs inspecting, we were citing for cosmetologists shaving. And that's kind of what created this, is the interpretation of the definition that did not include shave. So they did it, and maybe we didn't inspect as thoroughly as we do and didn't cite them, and so then there was no ramifications. But the law really didn't include them shaving before.
And that's the way that legal has looked at it, that under the barber statute, it specifically says shaving of the beard, shaving or trimming of the beard, and then it goes down to the cutting of the hair. And then cosmetology really talks about any which way you cut, I think it says cut hair. So when we look at it, legally, the way that we interpret statutes, the inclusion of one and the exclusion of another isn't allowed in the one that's excluded, which would be cosmetology. So, I mean, that's the correct legal reading that we have to take on that. And then the new statute passed that kind of probably bolstered that a little bit is what it is. And so now I see where you all are at. You're in the scenario where the way that I hear you all saying is that it's really just kind of a barrier within the industry for cosmetologists. Now it's like, you can't give a full service of something, and you kind of feel that if we just had the ability to do that, and they would take the class to do that or whatnot, that would be helpful within the industry. So, I mean, your original question is, can it be done? I mean, I don't know. It's kind of it's a little bit on the line. You have a rule in there previously that you can amend that has it down to 750 hours. So it could be, I think the right thing to do is to attempt to amend that to what you would like it to be. Currently, as it stands now, I would say that the board doesn't have the legal authority just to allow a cosmetologist to go and just test as a master barber without complying with this rule, because for the sake of the status quo as to what you all do in going forward is just to recognize your laws of the authority that you have to do. I think if you want to amend it, whatever you would want to amend it to, we'll take it up to the Attorney General's office and let them look at it eventually. Of course, it has to go through here, but I mean, I don't have a real good answer right now as to what the best way to go about it is, because I've just heard of it, just this afternoon. But I understand kind of where you're at. I think if we fast forwarded, I will give you this a little bit of advice. If we fast forward and we were going to pitch this to the legislature, some of the questions that they would ask is, so of these extra hours they're going to take, can you guarantee that they'll be taught how to shave and how to use trimmers, right? I mean, the core heart of the issue. And I don't know what the answer would be. If it's like, we don't know, it's just going to be hours, or could you make it?
Here's my question to you, is that, so this business is built, right? All of us have jobs and businesses because this business is forever changing. That's the nature of the business. The style that was in the style 5 years ago is not the style that is in today, and that's why we are relevant. And keeping up with those trends is the only way that we can continue to make a living, all of us. And we're really not doing ourselves a service if we don't continue to offer those new services that are in all of the magazines that our customers are asking for. The general public does not care what license someone has. So this is a business proposition. This is not, and I think it's very naive of us all to think that the only way that you can learn new skills is to go back to a beauty school or a barber school. I would argue that 99% of the licensees that we serve are seeking continuing education, and none of those continuous education hours are back at hair school, because that's just the building blocks. But there's no regulation on ongoing education. There's no ongoing education requirement in this state, and they are learning things that were never even mentioned at school, and actively
They're going
doing
to
them in their
YouTube
service.
for it is where they're going.
Absolutely.
And they're on YouTube.
And learn a lot.
So this just comes down to my question of, we've got 50, how many licensed cosmetologists? 55,000 licensed cosmetologists. We have 5,000 licensed barbers. And we're preventing 55,000 cosmetologists from shaving because they haven't gone to barber school.
Well, well,
Because there's no,
I
what you're telling
understand.
me is that there's no other way to learn how to shave
right. Well,
unless you go to 750 hours of barber school. I mean, you shave your face every day. You didn't go to barber school. I have clients all day long who teach themselves how to shave with a straight blade. They're not doing it on the public. I agree that there needs to be education. But I really, as a business owner, it is a disservice to our licensees to prevent them from learning new things or not allowing them to learn new things. It's very silly of us.
I agree with most of the things you said. I don't think that 99% of them are seeking continuing education. I don't see that from any group. But I do.
Oh, that's a sad truth. Yes, I would agree.
I do think there is value to going to the school, and no, we're not saying no to them. Currently, there is an answer to it. It's not a good answer. It's 750 hours in the program. So they do have an option. It may be a bad option at this point, but we're not preventing them. They do have an option. It's just how important is it to them? And if a student, I say this before all the time, you know, we need to look out for all the public. If a student who is a consumer makes a poor choice and goes to a school that doesn't teach them well, there's only so much that the board can do to guide them in that. Or a program, or you know, how many people went to medical school and never finished their course, or went to any university and got a degree or diploma and chose a different life after that. That's not something that we have to fix. You know, if they have an option, it is there. Maybe we can make that an option better than it has been. And I think that will be really what I think we're all trying to do here today, is figure out a way to get to a better place. Do you think it would be helpful if we pull out what a curriculum would actually be for a program for the differences and assign the hours to them? That's something that's not in either program, I don't believe.
I think if the board does go the route of amending this section and then the other one that's equivalent in the COSMO, that the curriculum would need to be addressed so that we can guide the schools. As a new barber school comes through, we can say, and offer, you know, here instead, because we just approved one not too long ago that had the 750 hours in the curriculum, and the fact is we don't know what that entails. But if we do the amendment by studying and breaking down the hours, we can know exactly what those hours are and not just half sounds right. And although it possibly is the right number, we just really don't know that.
So how would you, I mean, you'd have to go through both textbooks? And try to decide what's the same and what's different, I guess?
two programs, I guess that would be the only thing you could do.
Did you amend the hours down like Bobby had suggested?
I think to some extent, Mr. Gallant, you went ahead and kind of went through the differences. So the question is, in those differences between the clippers and the different equipment and definitely the shaving and the pedicuring, are we talking about 200 hours or is that not enough? I mean, my gut would tell me that that's probably a large number of hours and probably would more than cover.
And so you would have, I guess barber schools really would just have to have sort of a program, just a full license program maybe, where you just teach the shaving class.
Well, you would teach the equipment, all the different items that we've pinpointed and.
All those things are already in the curriculum
Yeah.
on the barber side.
Yep.
Well, and there's value of doing a test prep. Absolutely. I mean, I would sign someone up to go do I don't know what the hour it comes down to, but yeah, there's a curriculum there. I don't disagree with you on that. I mean, there's clipper work and there's shaving work and there's also, like in any school, state board prep. I mean, that's a lot of hours right there, just understanding what's on the test and how to do that.
And again, as you pointed out, Mr. Chairman, that there is the other option of 750 hours, because we may run into barber schools that won't do the 200 because there's no financial aid behind it, and now you've got people stuck. And unfortunately, I can see that happening, and they would be stuck and have to do the 750. But if we say, if the board decides to amend this rule to include 5 years minimum work experience and 200 hours and the exams, however.
I don't think you need the work experience, though. If you're going to go do the dual license,
3 hours? Okay.
I don't know why you'd need the work experience as well, because you're going to school to get that piece that you didn't get.
Then at least at that point, if you've got somebody that's not in the right part of the state that can do that, they would have to do the 750. I mean, we'd have to make sure to cover that in the amended rule. I don't know that all the barber schools will be able to carry the limited number of hours and not offer financial aid.
Ron?
I don't know that we would be allowed to under the programs of our accreditation. When a school is not accredited, they have lots of leeway. We're accredited. So any program that we have it adds a multiple $1,000 investment just to identify the program, and then there's $10,000 involved in re-inspections. And now that we're with THEC, that's a new program for them. That's another $1,000. So it starts to add up on that side, and that's a yearly cost or every 2-year cost. Problem that program would have to be profitable on its own. So
600 hours is required for federal aid. So that's.
I think it's so sad. Can I make the statement? It is so sad that your schools are bound by what is covered by financial aid.
Well,
I'm
it
so
is.
sorry. That is so pathetic.
It is, but all the
It really
fees
is.
add
I
up.
get it.
Yeah.
We're struggling right now with our estheticians that 600 hours is so common in other states, and then we're telling them to do 150, and they can't find a school to do it in. So that's why I throw it out there. I really think if we're going to do an amendment, we can't set our folks up for failure.
Right.
We
If
have
you're
to
looking
say.
at, so let me say this, if you're looking at a dual license program and you're taking people who are already licensed as one or the other, they're already potentially working. And they would be doing this part-time on their own time, and I would argue they would be, I don't know that they'd be seeking financial aid. I think they would be paying out of pocket for this.
And they can do that. They certainly can do that. But unfortunately, we still have to list those as programs within our accreditation guidelines. And that's where the additional cost for the schools comes into play.
a refresher course? I'm sorry to interrupt. A refresher course for barbering? Do you have that in your school?
We do that. We do that, but that's also within the barber program that we're licensed for and accredited for.
How many hours is the refresher course?
Generally, it depends on what they're trying to accomplish. It's generally catered to whatever they are, because they're not going to get a diploma or a certificate. It's not anything that's going to affect their hours with the state board. It's more like a continuing education course or an advanced training course that you could pick up at a hair show anywhere. It doesn't lead to licensure in any way.
Why do people do it?
As you said earlier, for continuing education, they realize that we have skills that we can teach them that they've been neglectful of. Maybe new styles come down the road. Hair colors lines change from time to time, and they'll come in and we'll brush them up on that sort of stuff.
Knowledge more than anything.
It's knowledge, yeah. It's not for a certificate. It's not for any credit with the board or anything like that. It's just bettering their skills.
They're already licensed.
They're already licensed.
Okay.
Okay. Well, do we have a recommendation here? Do we have a recommendation that we can do?
I liked Bobby's piece, the either or, but tied to the ability to do it part-time. Because I know I got 4 cosmetologists that I know would go and get a license if it wasn't full-time. That's the part that,
I think this would be, I mean, I don't know, my personal opinion, and I know I'm biased, but I think this would be great for barbers, because you're gonna have that many more barbers, you're gonna have potentially that many more instructors. I know every barber school is desperate for instructors because there aren't any.
I think it gains momentum for the category
Yeah.
too. I mean, I
Both
can't believe,
sides.
because in 1975, we were trying to do shaves and nobody wanted them anymore. And they were half the price of a haircut. And here we are 40 years later, where I get $15 more for a shave than I do a haircut. And we're talking about how to get somebody taught and licensed. It's crazy. But it's only coming further and further. I mean, it's not going away.
It's a growing thing.
So,
I'm going to stay with my convictions. Gonna stay with it. At least the hours could be
Yeah.
adjusted a little bit.
I like the formula, but I think
But,
the hours could be lessened.
Yeah, hours could be less, maybe 225, something like that. 100 hours less, but preferably I'm still going with the 325 and the 5 to 7 years work experience.
Continuous work experience. Not like 2 years here and then off for 4 or 5 years and 2 years here.
Right.
Continuous.
Continuous
That-
work.
So,
I think
but
I think 5 gets it.
we have recommendation that we
continuous.
need to amend the rule that we have.
Can we amend it and come back with this? Can we amend what we've got with what I just said?
I believe the proposal is 5 years' work experience and 325 hours, or
Right.
one or the other? Or, thank you, yeah.
But still, I mean, I couldn't, I'm probably not the only one who couldn't be comfortable allowing someone to test on work experience alone.
At both.
Why?
Am I the only one?
I'd rather have that than the hours if I had my druthers.
Well, yes, but
Experience is a
now
lot
they're
more-
not going to be able to have any experience doing shaves because it's going to be it's going to be against the law. I mean,
up to now, they shouldn't have been doing it.
right, but now especially they're going to be inspected and not able to do them. So
Not to say you can't go to continuing education.
We do not have continuing education, which I would like to see put into the effect to keep everybody updated. I don't know how much trouble that is since we're doing the
I mean,
apprenticeship.
Kelly, I can tell you that barbers here in town go all over the country for ongoing barber education. And they're licensed cosmetologists and they're licensed barbers. And they're seeking that on their own. Some. But then they'd have to sit for the test. And if you don't know your stuff, you won't pass the test.
The test is the litmus for all of it, I think. It's what's going to control the fact that if they can't pass it.
razor, I could pass it today.
You could. I would argue that you could.
And I don't even know, you know.
I would argue that nobody come back to you for a second shave and you wouldn't make any money doing it.
I mean, to your point, that's the test that the barbers have to take right now. So if you're a licensed cosmetologist and you can pass their test, and they can pass their test, what is the difference? They can pass your cosmetology test. What is the difference?
I don't think the intent of someone testing was ever that they never used a razor blade while they were in school. I think that if you go to most schools, you'll find most of the barber students using straight razors and straight razor blades on people.
Yeah,
whether
because
it's
they're doing it
towards
on
an
their
edge
neck.
up or
They're doing it
on
on
the
their
neck.
neck because it's a safe, easy spot to get to. I mean, you can stroke it. The face is the issue.
Say that they probably actually have had some experience with a razor blade.
Now
I don't
also,
disagree. I mean, I hire them all day. I hire them all day long, Ron.
also when we
don't.
were talking about the blades, the testing was on the shaving strokes. It wasn't about the blade.
Correct.
It was on the strokes. So there was another difference there. So I'm still sticking with the 325 or both. You know,
Oh,
I'd
okay,
like to
so
see
to
both.
amend this law, it would be, instead of crediting 750 hours, they would be credited 1,300 hours, or
Correct.
1,300 hours.
or however many. That allows 200, which surely,
You're giving them a barber license, which encompasses clipper work and all the other things too.
The clipper work isn't as easy as, I mean, people are making it sound like that's easy stuff. When I get a cosmetologist, I got to put more work into teaching them how to do a neckline, and as much as I do anything else.
like you said.
And there's a
they-
different sanitation too.
Yeah, how many hours you need for that?
Like you
as you
said,
can
they
get.
would just never go back to them
As
again.
much as you can get.
That's where you needed 300 hours for sanitation. 300 hours for the sanitation, right, Bobby?
So maybe 300, so maybe they're credited, what?
I think 200's enough for all of it.
For someone who already has a license.
Someone who's already,
We're not
yes.
talking about someone who has no idea what's going on. This is someone who's already
Yes.
passed, taken 1,500 hours of
They've
cosmetology
done
school.
sanitation, they've done, yeah. Depending on where they go to cosmetology school, they may have had tons of clipper experience. It's just, I mean, you never know. You may have an instructor who's really good with clippers. I
I
mean,
haven't met him yet. And I'm in year 44, so it ain't gonna
Yeah.
happen anytime soon.
yeah.
Clipper
Always
work is-
hopeful.
Clipper works
But
a
I agree.
different
In
art.
200 hours, there's the Clipper 101. How to use your clippers, how to take them
Yeah.
apart, how to put
After
them back
that, you gotta
together,
do the work,
how to
but you
use
can
your
get- we
blades.
can teach you.
Absolutely.
Okay, okay. So they're credited 1,300 hours. Now we have to address the full-time situation, which is in the rule now, correct?
I think that's the biggest hitch of all of it, to get people to go
part-time.
dual license. I think that, my son's a perfect example. I told him to go straight to barber school from cosmetology school. And if he didn't have debt, he probably would have. And if he wanted me to give him a loan, and I wouldn't, so he couldn't. So now he said, I'm going to do it later, Now he can't do
Then,
it.
are you gonna quit your job
No,
to
because
go?
he's doing 26 haircuts a day.
Yeah.
But to go to barber school would cost him more than what he ever is going to make getting shaven. But the ability to go part-time, and I just use him as an example because there's 4 of them in the barber shop now. And here's the biggest problem we have from a business standpoint is I got half my staff can do a hot towel shaving cream neckline, and the other half can't. So now we're compromising product and, you know, the
Well, you're gonna have to-
integrity.
Whatever their license is, when they come to work for you, you're gonna have to teach them what you want them done anyway.
Do 18 months of it.
Yeah, so, you know,
Yeah. And the thing is, we got to pay them about $16,000 to teach them.
I think,
They get trained and leave.
I
It's a
think we
bad
should-
deal.
Yeah.
yeah. I think we should possibly leave it full-time or part-time, because you're talking about 200 hours. If they go 40 hours a week, full-time, they can get it done in a month. If they, part-time, they can string it out however
But they can continue to work and do
they
it on the
continue to
side.
work.
So you can put full-time or part-time in there?
And to Ron, to your point, I think continuous learning is important in full-time methodology when there's various amounts of it.
Of
But I
course.
think if we're talking pedicure and clipper cutting and shaves, I think that over part-time isn't as diluted,
I agree.
you know?
I agree 100%. I do have one other question, though, about this, because I promise you it'll come up. If this is a rule change that we're proposing for the barber side, that is going to leave a huge inequity on the cosmetology side going the other direction. And when would that be rectified?
Well, I think it could be the same thing. You could learn
I agree.
pedicuring in 200 hours.
It's not a part of the curriculum right now, and
No,
this is not
a
changing the
barber,
Cosmo
a
rule.
barber would go to cosmetology school.
That rule's not open for change right now.
Well, let's open it.
Yeah. I think, and let me correct you, they could open the cosmetology rule to affect the cosmetology. We, in essence, are opening the rules for whatever the board at this point wants to see that needs to be touched. So we would, I think, have to touch both sides. And I think it makes
Exactly,
sense to
should
keep
be.
it the same
Absolutely.
number of
Yeah,
hours.
I think so, because in barber school, if they've had manicuring, a lot of that overlaps, so then they could definitely get it done.
Yeah, so for example, I have the numbers in front of me because I do love me some numbers. But the number
Can't
of
imagine, Amy.
What's that? I know
Can't
that comes
imagine
as a huge
you
shock
being
to
so
you.
statistical.
I love it. That's what I do. So Frank is a licensed barber. Your shops are dual licensed, both of them, all of them.
All of
So
them.
if you're a licensed barber, the number of actual shops that you can work in the state, you can only work in barber shops if you're a licensed barber, and that's 2,000 shops. So you're a licensed barber and you are applying for a job in a shop that's not a licensed barber shop. So that shop then has to get a different license. Or you could get a different license, and if you got the 200 hours and went to be a cosmetologist, it opens up 6,000 more shops in the state that you can go work at. That right now you can't.
And I think you're going to have a lot more dual license locations because of the ability that people are doing both. It's going to perpetuate it.
Yeah, and it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. And they like it because they get more money.
They don't. They get to use more of it. They don't get any of it.
So I think we're winding down on the language, which is a great piece, and legal can tweak it some before the November meeting, but if I'm getting it right, we are looking at both sides of the license qualifications to cross over between barbering and cosmetology, so that instead of 750 hours being accepted from the other discipline, it would be 1,300 hours. That way you would be missing 200 hours to be done full-time or part-time, or 5 years, 5 consecutive years of experience in the field you're wanting to be tested and licensed in. Is that correct? That's the piece that I want us to make sure to be on, just because we may not find every barber shop and or school and every cosmetology school able to give these 200 hours.
A barber who's wanting a cosmetology license, he can't be doing pedicuring. I mean,
They could come from another state, and in this particular case, that's really, I think, the vast majority of her experience that
okay.
that was legal to consider really did come from another state where she was recognized as doing barbering, and it wasn't not allowed. Or prohibited.
So that rule was taken out for us. All of my students did pedicures, and they worked in their own shops, and they actually had to give that craft up whenever the rule changed, so it took money away from them.
Why
Which
was
is
that
exactly what
pulled?
we're addressing now.
Why was that pulled? Do you know?
I didn't want it.
The pedicure. I think at some point between the two different boards, they determined through board meetings, or correct me if I'm wrong, that there had to be a difference between the two disciplines, and that was the difference.
I'd be glad to getting a pedicure by someone who's just licensed, apparently, at this point.
They have any sort of license?
Frank, I think if we look back at history, we can probably say that one group wants this, one group wants that.
Yeah.
The truth is, until a group of folks like us come together and we can reasonably work through the details to craft something that works for everybody, then you have those kind of issues. We don't want those kind of issues, I don't think. I think we want everybody to work, be successful, be happy, and raise the standard for everybody, not lower it. So anyway,
Pull
that's my
teeth
hope.
again.
But isn't this now against council's recommendation of going for a rule change instead of an amendment to the rule?
Working with this rule.
Can you rephrase your question? I don't think.
I said, isn't that going against the grain of your recommendation of not trying to make a rule change here as opposed to just making an amendment?
I think both of us have tried to explain that since it has to go to the Attorney General's office, we're not recommending you don't amend a rule. We're saying it's a gamble.
Yeah, no, I want, in probably a good way of putting it, I just wanted to let you all, just to be clear as to the process that we have to go through. I don't want to have a chilling effect on you all trying to come up with rule language. Please do. Please come up with rule language that you think for whatever conditions that you want to amend this so that you could more easily allow a cosmetologist to go and sit for the Master Barber's exam. I didn't mean to have a chilling effect that you say you can't do that. That's not what I was trying to do. I just want to have expectation management for you all that these are the processes that we will have to go
Not
to.
asking for 2,500 hours in hair school this time,
That's
okay?
right. That's right. I understand. I
For
completely-
$9
and I
million
appreciate
a
it.
course.
And I appreciate it. And I hope
So you tell Bill to stay in his office. We're okay.
That's okay. No, he'll come down once in a while. It's,
We're asking
that's
we're
no.
asking for less school. Did you hear that part?
No, I know, right? No.
Giveaway
No,
licenses.
and I don't want to, I just want to let you know that we will work whatever the language you all come up with to help. We can help. Sometimes the attorneys are not helpful with doing certain things or whatnot because we don't understand the ins and out of the industry. But we can try to be helpful to crafting language for you
Right.
all. If you guys come up with a vote as to generally what the hours or language is or the requirements, we can kind of help flesh out some of the specific details of that language, and we will take it through the process so that it goes on to get approval. If there's any hang-ups, we'll let you all know about that. But I just want to let you all know on the front end that when we looked at this is an old rule that's on the books and potentially has some issues. I didn't want to make that a chilling effect that it's not even worth going the process at all. Sorry. Definitely
No, I
worth.
just wanted to run it, because the thing is that if you're not going to believe in it with us, it's going to be hard for us to feel like it's
I
the
know,
right
this
thing.
is the best part about us is
It's
that
like,
we
can you
have this,
sell this one, man?
we
I mean,
honestly, we have this ethical obligation that even if we don't, we will definitely believe in it. I mean, we will. We will push it. I mean,
hey, man, we need you. We need you in our corner, man.
It's not that I agree with you. It's that I'm bound to this.
I'm telling you, I need to brag on Laura. The last set of rules that we were trying to get through, the ones that we've been working on since before last Christmas. One of the senior counsels up at the Attorney General's office, who actually has been practicing since the UAPA came out and these rules did in the late 70s, called her and said, "You've got this rule that's unconstitutional about these fees. I can't sign these rules off and go forward." And in like 7 days, she had it worked out. This is the language that can be done.
go,
So-
Laura.
Good
and then you all saw it. I mean,
Yay.
she really did, and that's a hard thing to have to deal with somebody who's very adamant of like, no, they're not going forward. I'm not signing them until you all change this. So she will definitely go to bat for you all.
Awesome.
And still, like with your other licenses, like the aesthetics, if they want to come to cosmetology, they still get only 150 for their hours, right?
It's the general hours, right?
It's the
That's a
general-
completely different
I touch on
statute.
that.
Don't go there, right?
And
Oh, come
again,
on,
those,
Amy. Get
there's
them numbers up.
differences
Not today.
Get them numbers
between
up.
those. I
I
think
didn't bring
we
those
all
numbers,
agree.
Patty.
But,
Okay,
I
so
mean,
for Tony and Laura to work on the,
work,
the
man.
the details of the language, and Ms. Barger, I'll leave it up to you if you want. I know that we're thinking move 1,300 hours. We're gonna leave the full-time or part-time open, and an additional 200 hours would be required, or the 5 years experience. I think that's the piece I'm still missing from the board, and then we can do a motion and.
Let me, got something else. On the 5 years work need to be where it can be proven. Proven. In other words, just not anybody come to the table and say, looking at the rules, I've got
should it
5.
be in the state of Tennessee or other states or?
No, anywhere.
Anywhere,
I think. I mean, you don't want
okay.
to penalize somebody for moving
No, I
from the
think
great state of New Jersey.
if they
do you?
have, if they've moved from if they have experience with a dual license in another state, absolutely. I think we should allow it to cross over. In Tennessee, we don't really have that option, so
You've got 5 years work experience working in the men's business. I mean, that's what we're saying. You can prove that you've got 5 years experience working in men's grooming, which would,
well, but the
Probably tough
shade-
to quantify,
I know,
though.
it's hard.
Somebody saying
I mean, I have
men's.
5
Quantify
experience
what?
working with
Yeah.
men.
That it was men's grooming. I think we're saying 5
barber.
years is like 5 years, right? I mean, so what'd you do? Four men a day, 8 men a
Yeah,
day,
I've-
only men. So,
It's hard.
I think it still gives you the ability that you've been around long enough.
5 years is 5 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because otherwise, I don't think you can quantify that.
No,
I'm
I
just
agree.
like today. Like I didn't know she was your girl, and she's saying she's been doing men since she gave up her first year, and I'm saying, how do I know that? But I'm thinking you've been doing it that long. You probably got some skills by now.
But are we going to
Brave.
have 50,000 cosmetologists who've been working for 5 years come and say, all right, I want my barber license?
I don't know about the 50,000, but you will have,
yeah.
you'll have,
But I'm just saying, I don't,
You know who you're going to get? You're going to get the market leaders that are staying on top of the industry, that are moving forward, and that's going to allow the whole industry to go forward together. You're not going to get people that are mediocre and lazy and move on over.
No, I would agree with you. I mean, when I've mentioned it to my staff, they are eager. They would sign up for this program tomorrow.
As mine, but it's because you're a market leader in your
want the
arena.
education, and they want to be able to have the other license. They're absolutely willing to pay the additional licensing fee. They're
But we're
absolutely
talking
willing to take the
about
test.
just giving a license or allowing them to sit for the test on work experience alone? Is that what we're talking about?
Talking about one or the other, if I'm not mistaken. And the main reason for one or the other is that many schools may not offer the hours, and then the person would have to hang in there and build the experience.
And at the end of the day, they still got to pass the test.
They do.
I mean, that's you can't, that's it, man. This qualifying for it and getting through. It's two different things.
And Kelly, I can tell you from personal experience, the gentleman from Alabama who moved here had to take the barber test. He took the theory twice, he took the practical twice, and he had to learn how to perm for the first time because he'd never permed. And that's on the barber exam. So we put him through a test prep, and we taught him how to perm. We don't perm. I mean, so a lot of what's on the test is stuff they already know.
I can't get totally comfortable with just giving a license.
Unfortunately, to me, that statement you just made kind of gets really, really close to the ragged edge of why does anybody need to go to school at all for anything? Because anybody can buy a book, read a book, and, I can roll a perm, I can roll a rod. That is a far cry different from saying you can look at that scalpel and examine it in a meaningful way to know that the chemical you're placing on there is not permanent damage to them, up to and including third-degree burns.
Well, I'm not
and hair
advocating
loss.
for that. No, I mean, I'm saying, if you've got 1,500 hours in school and a license, you've obviously done a lot of school.
Well, but, again, I'm not trying to be contrary here at all. I promise I'm not. But on the barber side of this, whenever you have some barbers who decide, hey, I want that extra license too, and it's available to them on the cosmetology side, you've done a great job talking about how they weren't trained in barber schools and they weren't educated in a lot of these areas. They didn't know anything. So now they're going to walk in and we're going to give them a license in cosmetology just because they've got 5 years of experience. And now
You have to pass the test.
Yeah,
and now
They have
pass
to pass the
the
test.
test. But as you said, you train somebody in a classroom that you do that pass the test on perms. They test you on how to apply a rod. They don't test you on how to formulate and assess. That's what that practical examination on that part is. So those barbers are going to come in with no experience.
He
they're gonna
passed
start
the same
applying.
test that your students passed.
They do.
And the only litmus test right now in the state of Tennessee on whether or not you become licensed is whether you pass the two tests. And he passed the test.
And have completed the hours of training. And each state, each school does not have the same level of training. In Tennessee, that's the ones we're dealing with, of course. They have a curriculum that state board provides to them. And I think we've all seen that each school teaches that curriculum differently for themselves and what they deem is most important. So I can see a lot of complaints and problems down the road on that side because what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And there's a lot more to be considered than just I can pass a test. And even with work experience, suddenly today, since I'm allowed and I've passed the test, I'm going to go ahead and start applying these things. That may be a poor business decision, but it will happen. As I sit here today, I can say that it will happen. Something to consider. And I'm not against this. I'm really not, but it's something to consider.
I think regarding the work experience, if they have the schooling, we can write in the rule to where it'll be easy for the office. When the school hours are there, they submit to test, we're good. If they have the work experience, I think we almost have to have them come before the board and really talk about the work experience. I don't know that piece of paper, because I can no longer take tax records for work experience, right? It's not going to tell me what you really did. This is about what you did. I think that those applicants are going to have to appear before the board and explain the work experience. And maybe at that point, the board decides how to be consistent with work experience. You know, you no longer can shave if you're a cosmetologist, but show me that the majority of your clients are men and what type of shop, and bring me, you know, not only a resume of yours, but the shop's letter of recommendation and their numbers. What do they do? I think then the board would feel comfortable on a case-by-case approving the experience.
And that would make sense. Those are good safety steps.
Maybe I can suggest, I've kind of taken notes about all the things you guys want to put in there. I can work on language for this rule. Send it out to you before the next board meeting, until I think you can actually see it on paper and read it and, you know, poke holes in the, I think that's where we have to start. So if someone wants to make a motion that you want this to happen, and I can work on it, and then we can go from there, and I can add everything in that we've discussed today.
Before we close that out, and I know we've been here a long day, I don't mean to try
That's
anybody's
fine.
patience.
I wanted to make sure you guys knew I'm.
Different topic. There are two things here that I know they deserve a lot of discussion and consideration, but I will just bring them up now. Alcoholic beverages in barber shops are prohibited at this time. I get phone calls weekly, multiple phone calls about this issue with barber shops versus cosmetology shops. Is this a rule that we want to keep in place, or is this a rule that we can do away with?
In the rules, and those of you that are shop owners may have the direct experience. As it is, the field inspector is to go into a barber shop. If alcohol is being served, they are supposed to cite. I don't think I've ever seen a citation. And yet, you know, I get the calls of, well, they do serve alcohol. So it definitely could be reviewed. Does it go back to, you know, worrying about having young barbers and not being able to stay within the realm of what's adequate if alcohol is being served? I don't know all of the history, but I would venture to say that that's the case. But I know a lot of our high-end barber shops address that, and many have probably chosen to not come to Tennessee because of that.
Well, as when I was opening up, I'm very good friends with the Budweiser distributor who was going to do this whole great Mac Daddy wall for us, right? And then I found, because all I knew at that point was that you could in a salon, right? So we couldn't do it in a barber shop. And quite frankly, now I'm glad that rule is there, because I can blame Nashville. When I got a client who probably would have had 3 or 4 drinks during a 30-minute haircut, and then who knows where they're going, or who knows what they'd say to one of your female staff, or who knows, right? I love the fact that that's there for me. It's the barrier that it's, because the second that rule's not there, and I got to say now it's my company policy, and I got to live with these people in town, then I got an issue, right? So now it's like, you know what? Call Roxana if you don't like it.
I've heard exactly that same statement several times.
I'm serious. I love it, and it makes it clean with the staff. It makes it clean with the clientele, and because we're in a haircutting business. We're not in the entertainment bar business.
I'm just like, why is it so important, the alcohol being a barbershop or so? I mean, why
On
is
both
that
sides,
important?
because I have heard exactly the side that Mr. Gambusa has. Surely you're not going to open that up. And again, it is in the rules, so we could. It's not in the laws. But the fact is that the cosmetology shops allow it, and so many more of our shops now are duly licensed, possibly because of the shaving, who knows. But then the stricter of the rules is what prevails, and now you've got a duly licensed shop really frustrated because they like the champagne or a glass of wine, and our female clients have probably requested that.
I would say it's the same argument that we're making on this
Yeah,
straight razor
the
business.
two sides being different. That's exactly right.
I know, like the nail bar, it serves wine with your manicures and pedicures.
I know, but that's.
You don't look
don't
around to
know.
see what else is going on.
That's right.
I think
They'll
it
sit
should be
at 30 seconds.
BYOB.
Some of the barbershops are seeing it as a detriment or a holdback, because the barbershop next door is not supposed to be doing it, but they are.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm following the rules, and I'm not, and I'm losing some business because of that. that's the arguments I hear.
We had guys that want us to have private lockers so they can keep
Sure.
their own like liquor in there. So when they come, like, we cut hair.
Yeah.
I mean, are you kidding? This ain't a sports bar,
Yeah.
you know. So I love the fact that it's like in the rule.
We can definitely leave it alone. If the
Can we
board doesn't
please?
feel strongly, we leave it alone. That doesn't
Ron, what
mean-
else you got? What was that other one? You said you had two.
Barber poles for schools. Since the apprenticeship is coming on board, there is a restriction that a school is not allowed to use a barber pole. What? And it's probably been out there forever. Oh, certainly.
Is this
Barber
with the
school can't
patent?
use a barber pole?
Is it
Sorry.
with, is it part of their patent? I'm just
No,
wondering.
no. It's just a rule. I think in
That's right.
days past it had to do with someone made an argument that students aren't barbers, so they can't use the barber pole. Just like we had an issue with some advertisement a couple of meetings ago. We're going to get into the advertisement business. It's in there since if apprentices are going to be not barbers, but they're out there. Frankly, I'd like to see that one come out. I think that if you
I
want
think
to.
it would be the best form of advertising to get more people into barber schools for haircuts,
Totally.
which is exactly what you need your students to be doing.
I totally agree. I mean, it's like with the swooshes to Nike for the barber
Yeah.
industry. I mean, it's what it is. That's our icon.
So if the barber pole is in the rules, we can definitely look at it. And as Laura's looking and we're finalizing the language to put to, we will add this amendment to removing it. I thought maybe it did have something to do with the pole itself, but if it's just our own thing, we can definitely look to remove it.
You're
Get
talking about
yourself a pole,
removing the barber pole or keeping it?
Removing it from
Adding
the
it,
language.
adding the availability for schools to be able to have it.
Okay,
Removing the language that is currently stopping them.
Prohibits it.
Okay. Are we good with the rules? Is there anything else?
I want to make the motion to let Laura come up with the writing of how it should be worded and us to review it in the November meeting.
I second.
We have a motion and a second to permit Laura to compile these rule changes.
Yes.
Presented at the next meeting. It's properly seconded by Frank, I believe. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries.
Okay, we have two items, and I'm going to refer to our update first because it's quick and actually very positive. I want to inform the board
Roxanne,
that.
can I ask a question real quick?
Yes, absolutely.
So to revisit Joe and testing? Guinea pig?
I think based on what Tony said, and you all can correct me and Laura can correct me, right now we don't have the availability with which to waive the 750 rule that is in there, and in lieu of it, consider the experience. Am I right that he said that? Okay. So until this rule, and what the board can decide is if we think that the rule that we're going to come up with the language for this 750 can move quicker by itself, and we start it, then that would definitely be an option to go while we work on everything else. Sounds good? So on September the 9th, the State Board of Cosmetology and Barber Examiners, along with all the other regulatory boards, converted over to a new computer system. The system is used for licensure and complaint. This project has been in the works for over 3 years. It has been a huge undertaking. We've been testing, we've been talking about it. Just to give you a brief history, prior to September the 1st, the system we used was a DOS-based computer system from 1994. So we kept chugging at it, but no updates, obviously, no one maintaining, and no improvements we could do, and no matter what we really would have tried. So this was well worth doing. The conversion was a true success. Now, having said that, anyone that has rolled out technology knows that success doesn't mean flawless, and it doesn't mean immediate by any standards. So we are still currently, of course, working on the system. Both new licensees and anyone old that is renewing is now being able to get a license mailed out. So we were kicking out licenses. They are able to send in their information. We are processing everything that we do with all of these individuals, and each day we're learning and getting more efficient. So the team has done a phenomenal job being patient, trying to figure out what we can do as we learn and work out some of the kinks. Basically, the renewal online system is if you try to renew something, it doesn't directly connect you, and that's because it is a more secure system. And so it's asking you for an original number that the board office has. As our licensees with December renewals, hopefully in the next week or two, get their notices, it will have that piece that they're missing to be able to renew online. And here in the very near future, we'll release that link to pay on the online system. The system no longer requires an online fee, and although it wasn't a high fee, it was a little under $3. That's no longer going to be charged to them. Our encouragement is to try to get folks more often to do the online, to be familiar with the technology. That way they can change their own address. They have a receipt immediately to post at their stations instead of waiting the 10 days to 2 weeks to get their actual license. They'll be able to use a bank account number, so where in the past you had to have a credit card, now you can use your routing number and just pay with your bank account. That again is phenomenal. And so we're very excited about that, and I just wanted to share this information so that if you've got individuals who say, well, I tried to renew and I couldn't online, have them call us. We're walking them through until that link is available. Also, for the folks that had expiration dates in August and September in our schools, we sent out everything early, and we sent out second reminders in hopes to catch everybody in advance. But we are live. It's a web browser-based system, so we are all using the old system and the new to get really familiar with it. But to be honest with you, we're going to be able to do reports. We're going to be able to customize some things. And then moving forward, like I mentioned, the renewals for the shops, it's going to give us some availability to do things for schools to add some different things. So we're really excited. And last but not least, we're going to talk about the fee. So if you'll turn to your very last page on the iPads, I emailed everyone one more time the fee structure. Again, this goes back to conversation with Deputy Commissioner. He filled the board in, especially Ms. Graham, you weren't here. We talked about the last time that the board had to review fees and increase any type of fee, and it's been well over a decade. And so we have to be self-sufficient as a board, and with times just different costs and parts of doing business, the complaints that we pick up, obviously those fees behind, just a little of everything. We're not short as a merge board. We've got an excess, and I'm thrilled to report that when we closed June, we did end up obviously with money, which is wonderful, but not a lot. And so it's something that the board discussed and is highly considering increasing a fee. So this is only looking at the new and the renewal fees. And I promise that once we come up with whatever that suggested amount is to raise, as we enter these into the rules that you've been looking at, we're going to look at any other fee. For example, there's a duplicate license fee, and if it makes sense to leave it alone, we're going to leave it alone. But if any between the Cosmo and Barber don't line up, that's the point at which we'll kind of look at it. We charge a student certification fee of $25. It should be the same for both boards. We charge a license certification of $50, and I think the Barbers is $150. I mean, it just... So we're going to bring those also to line up, and even if it means dropping a little bit, I think that once we make this decision on the big piece, which is our 58,000 or so licensees, that decision should cover any other smaller fee that we raise or decide to meet halfway. Does that make sense? So I don't have them all listed here, but let me know if you have questions. At the bottom, we kind of have the different proposals. And so under licensees, Cosmo, of course, is at 50, Barber's at 80. And so if we increased cosmetology to 55, that would mean we would lower Barber's to 55 as well. That's kind of how I did option 1, 2, and 3, looking at the licensees, the shops, and the schools, where they would meet.
Yeah, and just the presentation. Never met an Excel sheet I didn't like.
You don't get out much, right?
I don't.
Since the baby.
I mentioned I have 202, right? Maybe I need to. Obviously, I need to. Where are you going next?
Come on up.
So if we went with the $55 as a licensee, Shops, I think on all of the categories, I left at a midway point of 75. And the main reason that the shop license also needs to go up is it costs us about $50 to do an inspection on a shop. Our rules actually list the inspections separately as $50, and that's all we conduct on the cosmetology shops, period. That doesn't count any other time for anything. And so it would, again, give a break to our barber shops who are paying, $100 to renew. And so, and then the cosmetology, kind of the same thing. If we go with option 1, and we would have an extra $148,000 plus a year, that's decent. It's not huge, obviously. So my inclination is more in the middle, but I really want some ideas and suggestions and thoughts with where those numbers line up for you all.
Still the every other year. The licenses are still good for 2 years.
Yes, but that dollar amount is per year. Yes. Yes, because, right, every year we'd have a certain number of group renewing.
I like the kind of in the middle. It's not too much for some people.
We don't want to come back. I think Bill even addressed that. We don't want to make a change that doesn't make sense. And we don't want to increase and meet cosmetologists at the barbers at $80. That would be tragic. Because I'm asked often, what do you mean thy penalty is $80? When barbers are 1 day late, they pay $80 for that 1 day. It's a hard thing to say when they just forgot to mail it. It really is. And so they're paying more just for the penalty than cosmetologists pay for the penalty and their license. So we'll look at that penalty as well and make sure that it's the same. But if we stay in the middle and line other things up, I think we should have a cushion. And I think going all the way to 65, $15 increase is a pretty big increase.
%. It's a 30% jump.
I like the middle, the 60.
Yeah, Ron, just say it, man.
I was waiting for somebody to throw some more comments out there. Can we have a motion to accept the $60, $75, $150?
Make that
proposal?
motion.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any other
I think it's the
discussion?
right way to go, don't you? The middle.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The motion carries.
How the fees will work is in November, when we look at all the rules, these will be incorporated to it, and any other, such as the penalty for the barbers, and they'll kind of line up with that concept. And at that point, we can still change it. If someone says this particular line doesn't make sense, we look at it at that point. So that is the last thing that I have. Mr. Chair, I'll hand it over to you to see if you have anything else, or we can adjourn.
We'll have afternoon speeches for the next 2 hours, right?
I make the motion, we adjourn.
I'll second that one, Judy.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Ron, thank you. Nice work.
I will tell you this, when we said we were going to be talking about that stuff this afternoon, I said, there's no way we're going to get through that. I thought it'd be one of them that went on and on and on. I think that was good work.
Good.
That was good work.